So today we're going to look at CSS skills graph. Based on this design from the folks at Best BSD Freebies, we're going to be essentially coding this part that shows the skills in a horizontal type of graph. So I have a bit of a boilerplate code ready, index file that just has the Roboto font that we'll be using from the Google web fonts, a container with one bar title here. Then for the main.js, we have an empty file and basic styles just to get a nice presentation. And this is what it looks like in the browser. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the design real quick. We have about 5 skills here. We have a bar that is a container, and then we have an inner bar that has the value of how much of that skill this designer has. So how would we go ahead and represent that? So let's start first with the HTML. Okay, in our index file, we had this hello. Let's go ahead and instead of just hello here, let's put in Photoshop, since that's the first skill that we are targeting. And for the bars, we're gonna have an outer container with the class of bar, and inside of it we're gonna have an inner container with the class of bar inner. So this is not gonna hold any information, but how are we gonna go about the numbers that we see here? So we're gonna be using pseudo selectors. But in order to do that, let's first add a data attribute here. And let's just use data % and give it a value of 90%. Now that we have this data % in here, if we were to refresh, we will see Photoshop, but nothing yet for the bar. Anything that's going to be represented inside the bar here is we're gonna be using CSS for that. So let's get into our CSS, and let's start with the outer container, which is bar. Let's go ahead and give it a background color, and we will go with I think on the design it was F2, F2, F1. Let's give it a width of 100%. So it will take the entire width of the parent container. Then let's give it a height of 30 pixels. Okay. And some spacing for the bottom. Let's give it a margin bottom of 40 pixels. Okay, I think that's good for the bar. Now let's go into the bar inner. Let's go ahead and give it background color as well. And we will do 2ECC71. That's the gray color, that's the green color that you saw in there. Let's, just for the sake of showing what it would look like, let's give it a width right now of 90%. Let's give it a height as well, so we can see it. 100%, since it's a child container of bar. And let's refresh and see what it looks like now. Okay, so we have the beginning of the building blocks, but we still need to add that 90% here. So one cool way of doing that is we're going to be using the pseudo selectors. So you have seen pseudo selectors before if you have styled anchor links. So you have maybe used a link or a hover. In this case, we will use the after sudo selector. So to do that, let's take bar inner again and add that selector of after. So one more thing we need to add here in the bar inner, it's going to be acting as a parent container to the after. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give it a position relative. And I'm going to go ahead and for the after, I'm going to give it a position absolute. Let's just put it to the right. And let's do 2.5%. And let's go ahead and add that 90% value. The way to do that within CSS is using the content attribute, and we can target any attribute that's on that element that has the class of bar inner and target the data percent that we have used in our HTML. So this data percent here is the one that we have used here, and essentially we are telling CSS go ahead and grab that value and use it as the content for this. So let's go ahead and refresh our browser, and you can see that 90% is there. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's go ahead and do a couple more things here. We want it to be vertically centered. We know that this parent is 30 pixel. One way to do that is use the line height rule on that element. So let's go ahead and add a line height of 30 pixel. And let's go ahead and give it a color as well. So there we go. Let's refresh, and very nice. So it's getting very close to the design that we have here. So this design is using Roboto, and this is bold. So let's go ahead and style our bar title and as well our content. So since we are already on the percentage, let's finish that off, and let's give it a font size. I think it's a little smaller. So the base of the document is 18 pixel. We can leave it at that, I believe. Give it just a font weight of 700. So 700, since we have the Roboto font here and we have these two font size, was it 400 and 700? So for 700 will represent the bold. Okay, so we have that. Let's go ahead and take care of like the bar title. So in our CSS, let's just go and let's put it right at the top here if we were just to follow the structure that we have in our HTML. And let's give it a font weight of 700 as well. In the design, everything is uppercase, so let's go ahead and make sure we have that too. And give it a font size of 22 pixels. It has more of a grayish color, and I believe when I captured it, it was 566336 for a lighter gray. And then the margin. So by default, header elements will have top and bottom margin. We want to control that. So let's go ahead and add margin 0 on the top, 0 on the right, 20 for the bottom, and 0 on the left. Okay, so we have that. And let's see, we had taken care of the spacing for the bar as well. Let's refresh. And there you go. So this is not very gray for the Photoshop font color. So let me fix that real quick. So for the bar title, the color, I'm missing a 3 here, I believe. So it's 566 366 for the gray. Okay, that looks more like it. So if we put our design in this part and what we have here, I will say that we have pretty much step 1, 2, and 3 pretty well covered. Let's add the other skills. So let's go back to our index. Take this block and pretty much copy it 3 more times. Okay, very nice. So we have our 4 skills in there and everything is at 90%. So let's look at the design again. The Illustrator is at 80%, HTML, CSS 90%, and PHP MySQL 70%. So Illustrator 80%, HTML, CSS stays the same, and for PHP MySQL 70%. So when we refresh, we see this number being updated 90%, 80%, 90%, 70%, but the bar size is still the same. Now, if we stick with CSS, there is one quick way that we can take care of this. And if you have played with fonts before, icon fonts, that's a technique that is used pretty much a lot to do that. We could go ahead and just add a secondary class. So here we have bar 90, bar 80. This one would be bar 90 again. And this one would be bar 70. So what we will do in our CSS is just take those classes. Instead of this width of 90% inside of bar inner, we will just have a default width of 0%, maybe. And let's go ahead and add our secondary classes. Bar 90, we'll have that. Let's copy and paste that just 2 more times in this case, because we have 80 and 70. And for this one, we'll have 90%, 80%, and 70%. And if we had more, we will be adding more. So let's go ahead and refresh. And there you have it. So 90%, 80%, 90%, 70%, which basically is the same thing as our design here.